Ference. You can follow me on X at BrianFerence1 or MagMindPodcast.com. Today I'm going to be live on Joe Oltman's show, Joe Untamed, and I'm just going to be streaming this from my side, just so you can see the interaction on my side. Anyways, do check out my previous episodes, MagMindPodcast.com. You can also check out BrianFerence.com, and I'm just going to get set up here, so stay tuned. All right. We're connecting through Zoom, which is kind of interesting. I've used Zoom a lot before. Not the biggest fan of it, since it's Chinese owned. I prefer Brave. Okay, let's see. Click on the audio button to mute your mic. Test speaker microphone. Okay. Yes. I want the camera to be pro web. Test. Test. Microphone. Well, I could leave that one.
The Real Thing.
Oh, I wouldn't watch The Real Thing. It is not that fun.
but Ben Bank is this comedian from Canada. Just absolutely can't stand this mayor, and he's got probably a dozen videos that just he's riffing left and right. So it's a good thing. But I just want everyone to know that there's more than one racist.
I'm not a racist.
It's not just Joe.
Why did you call me a racist? That's not racist. So you're not. I think you could probably say I appropriated the Singaporean people.
You did.
But they sell semiconductors. They have semiconductors.
Well.
Hey, Brian, can you hear both of them okay?
Yes, I've got good audio on them. How's my audio?
I think we need to.
We're going to get in trouble.
I think getting in trouble is actually a really good thing.
It's healthy.
It's very healthy. I mean, you got to have a good sense of humor. I got yelled at a couple of days ago by someone who says, you took something very serious and you turned it Karen. Her name was Karen. Okay, it was.
Sorry, Brian.
What's that?
Can you hear them okay?
I heard them before. I don't hear them right now, but I heard them before fine.
Yeah, I turned it off.
The total is north of $5 trillion.
It's good audio.
Okay, perfect.
Got
you? All right, so I'll let them know you're ready.
Okay, how's mine sounding?
Sounding good.
All right, perfect.
You go into a recession. A recession. That's not how recessions work. It's cost of money. It's interest rates. It's positive, negative pressures in the economy based on supply and demand. Most of them is tied back to energy costs. You're not going to go into if we become energy independent and we cut off dependency from other countries, that'll actually ease any sort of pressures that we have in the country. And you could talk to many of these economists that are out there that are saying, oh, we're heading into a recession. They'll get on MSNBC or they'll get on CNN and they won't talk about any of the indicators, right? And if you don't talk about the indicators, it's easy to say the stock market's dropping. Yeah, the stock market dropped because people were divesting from investment, mostly in chip stocks. That did happen. right?
Well, it's also, you had Scott Bessent recently in an interview with Tucker, and he really provides some interesting insights into China from a standpoint of just how large our debt is. And this is actually because it's so large, it's actually a greater liability to China than it is to us. And you've also got this obligation that Trump is going to have to refinance with the Fed to get interest rates down. So people, when they get skittish, they want to invest in gold, hard currencies, or treasuries. And so I'm not an economist, but it's weird because we are getting all of the doom and gloom talking points, yet you're pointing out this great news that we're getting from private investment. And then I've seen some stuff on X that made sense to me as a non-finance guy, which is this idea of not equating the stock market to the economy. And just getting that reminder that most of the stock portfolios out there aren't owned by Main Street.
Right.
And we've been basically raped and drag after the coals. And so I'm just in this position where I don't feel it, Joe. I mean, in the stock market, but I've already lost just about everything. So I'm probably not a great candidate to ask. You are a bit of a stock guru, though. So
yeah, so I've invested in stocks quite a bit, and it's like playing. It's a gamble. The stock market's a gamble. You have long-term gambles or long-term holds. You have short-term gambles, short-term holds. You can play on both sides. I mean, there are times that I know that a stock's going to go down, so I'll short it. I'll short the stock. But I look at value-driven investments, and so there still are some out there that's a value-driven investment. I would argue right now that Tesla is probably one of the highest value-driven investments there is out there, because Tesla, something is going to happen in order to consolidate what Elon's doing. I promise you he's going to do that. And he already did it. So he took what he was doing with the panels, the solar panels. He combined that with Tesla. Most people don't know that. The battery technologies that happens in houses, that's all tied into Tesla. Those are all Tesla walls. So he doesn't just do cars. He does that. And he just did something really interesting that nobody knows about. He combined XAI or XI with X. He just merged those two organizations together and took a lower evaluation in order to do it, in order to increase value. So he's already starting to do this consolidation. So the biggest thing that happens in consolidation is that you have singular value, and this is for everybody to pay attention. You have singular value. So you have the value of the stock today. And then you have the synergistic value. So when you combine two companies, you have the value of one company, the value of another, and then there's a VIG that's put on, or a multiple that's put on putting those together. Both companies do really well. Together they do better. Typically that can be between 20% and 100%. And so you could argue that by putting Tesla together with some other organizations that he has and creating this massive brain, that he could be one of the first ones to hit $5 trillion in asset value. Because if he rolls XAI into Tesla, which he's already using the technology now, that's how he's able to advance it.
One other thought is he's been a pioneer in robotics. So one of the things that China does offer is usually their cheap labor. And it seems that if you're wargaming this, like, okay, you want to have a boycott, you want to have sanctions, you guys want to go at it from a superpower standpoint. He's put out there this assumption. At first, the figure was astonishing. I don't have the specifics, but I mean, he is looking to have robotics throughout manufacturing. And so to the degree that we can bring those jobs back, it may not be jobs, but from a standpoint of not having to do business with China, that seems to be in his back pockets as well.
Yeah. I just want to be clear when I tell you that I'm not a financial analyst, but I've done very well on the stock market. And, I've bet all my chips on companies before. I bought a stock called Maxar, MAXR. They lost a satellite. Stock went from $62 overnight down to $2.71 because it lost about $1 billion satellite. They had a lot of debt, but interest rates were still low. And so I'm sitting at the table and I'm looking through everything. And then I go home and I go look for the satellite that they lost in orbit. And I go, I wonder if there's an insurance policy on the satellite. Nobody talked about it, right? $1 billion in lost value. It's like somebody reaching in your pocket taking $1 billion out, right? The company is, you have to carry that debt. You don't have anything to carry. What do you think I found?
Insurance policy.
Yeah. So I called all my friends and I go, take every dollar you have out of every stock and put it in this stock. Every dollar. Put everything that you have in this one stock. And they're like, what? Are you sure? I was like, listen, I'm telling you right now. So I bought that stock at $3.83. Okay. I put it everything. Okay. 90%. And for the first 2 weeks, it went to like $4, $4.15. They're like,
Brian,
get out.
do you have space?
No, that stock's going to $40.
What's that?
Do you have any space to back up away from the camera a little bit?
Yeah, let me see if I can do this better.
Yeah, it's just hard for me to get you with some headroom in the center.
Let's see how far. Yeah, it might just be a little bit at an angle. Is that better right there? I can also.
Yeah, that is better.
Okay. I can see if I can move it back even more. Do you want it to go back even more?
You can give yourself a little more room.
Let me see.
That would help. Where you were is usable though.
Let's see. Some stuff around here. How's that?
Yeah, that is definitely better. Thank you.
Okay, no worries.
Good to go now.
He's a master negotiator, and he's giving you guys some strategies, but he's not the only one. There's over 70 countries that have reached out to the United States wanting to negotiate tariffs
with the national negotiator.
With the man. So go ahead and bring up cut A2, if you would.
In total, since the Liberation Day announcement, nearly 70 countries have already reached out to the president to begin a negotiation. Countries are falling over themselves to reform their unfair trade practices and free open their markets to our country. Why? Because these countries greatly respect President Trump and the sheer power of the American market. These countries realize they've gotten filthy rich over the past few decades by imposing substantial tariffs on American-made products and ridiculous non-monetary barriers to block out American industry. The jig is up. Past American presidents sat by and let this happen, but President Trump stood up for our country, and he is saying no more. The president's message has been simple and consistent from the beginning. To countries around the world, bring us your best offers, and he will listen. Deals will only be made if they benefit American workers and address our nation's crippling trade deficits. America does not need other countries as much as other countries need us, and President Trump knows this. He's going to use the leverage of our markets and our country to the advantage of the people he was sworn in to represent. On the other hand, countries like China, who have chosen to retaliate and try to double down on their mistreatment of American workers, are making a mistake. President Trump has a spine of steel that he will not break, and America will not break under his leadership. He is guided by a firm belief that America must be able to produce essential goods for our own people and export them to the rest of the world. A strong America cannot be solely dependent on foreign countries for our food, medicines, and critical minerals. And America must always maintain a robust defense supply chain. Reprioritizing and strengthening our manufacturing industry are essential national and economic security issues of the utmost importance to President Trump.
have utmost respect for Peter Navarro, but he knows nothing about economics. And I study economics today. Like, I read all sorts of, as much as I possibly can. There's a book called Principles of Investment Strategies, written by the guy that ran the endowment for right. And I read that book backwards, forwards 2-3 times, and it's a great. He's amazing. And so I read these books to figure out, what it is that I need to do when the markets go up and bond market goes down, and what is the Treasury doing, and then my friend Derek is, a walking encyclopedia. But Peter Navarro is just parroting what he hears from someone else because it makes sense. If tariffs didn't work, other countries wouldn't tariff our products coming into their country.
Well, this is news to me. I thought that Navarro was pro-tariff because, he was brought in, I think, the last time around. So I'd like to. I don't know enough to. I know that we've got a quote here that Elon Musk referred to Navarro as dumber than a sack of bricks, but I've always thought that Navarro was a America first.
But he still doesn't understand the economics.
Okay,
let's go ahead and play.
America does not need other countries as much as other countries need us. And President Trump knows this. He's going to use the leverage of our markets and our country to the advantage of the people he was sworn in to.
We're down here where it's the one, where Musk was asked. It's 4. Sorry.
There's been some public sparring between Elon Musk and the president's trade advisor, Peter Navarro, on some of these tariffs. Musk actually referred to Navarro today as being, quote, dumber than a sack of bricks. Are you or is the administration, the president, all concerned that this is maybe impacting the public's understanding of these tariffs? It might be messing with the message on it?
No, look, these are obviously two individuals who have very different views on trade and on tariffs. Boys will be boys, and we will let their public sparring continue. And you guys should all be very grateful that we have the most transparent administration in history. And I think it also speaks to the president's willingness to hear from all sides, that he has people at the highest levels of this government in this White House who have very diverse opinions on very diverse issues, but the president takes all opinions in mind, and then he makes the best decision based on the best interests of the American public. Deanna.
Okay, so last thing is, I never thought I'd ever hear this, and then we're going to get to Brian. I want to get Brian on here. Got lots to go over with Brian. So we'll take a break after this, but CNN's Harry Enton called on CNN President Trump a soaring eagle. he said he's not a lame duck. If anything, he's a sort of, this is amazing. This is while he's trying to take pokes at him. But let's play it.
I think there was this concern among some folks that Donald Trump would come in for a second term and kind of be a lame duck. He ain't no lame duck. If anything, he's a soaring eagle. What am I talking about here? Let's talk about Trump executive orders in 2025. He's already signed 111 so far. That is the most at this point in a presidency in at least 100 years. In fact, it's the most in any single year, and we're only in April, since Harry S. Truman in the early 1950s. The bottom line is, whether you like Trump or you don't like him, you can't say that he's come in and not try to deliver on what he at least believes was his promises on the campaign trail, and he's doing so in historic fashion.
How are people reacting to and feel about Trump's approach?
Yeah, okay. So Trump's approach here, what are we talking about? Trump's approach to presidential power. I think the American people recognize what he's doing here is completely different. We're talking, get this, 86% of the American public believes that Trump's approach to presidential power is completely different from past presidents, compared to only 14% who believe it is in line with precedent. And we're talking about at least 79% of Democrats, independents, and Republicans. So again, you can agree or you can disagree with Donald Trump, but what you can't disagree with is that he's doing things very differently. I have used the Frank Sinatra quote before. He is doing it, quote unquote, my way, and that is what Donald Trump has done throughout both of his presidential terms, and he's certainly doing that, Kate Baldwin, in term number 2.
All right, quick commercial break. We'll be right back with Brian Ference.
see how we had a little bit of fire.
Yeah.
Brian,
Hey, Joe, how's it going?
living the dream. How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good. Doing pretty well.
All right. Well, we're just we're ready to get scalping old Scotty.
Oh, good. How are you doing, David?
I'm doing good, Brian. It's good to see you, brother.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on the show. I appreciate it.
Oh, it's long overdue, man. I've been following the stuff you're putting out there, and I'm so glad that you got the attention for it, because we've been on Scott Pressler's trail for years as a con artist, but no one's quite synthesized all the stuff like you have. And, it's great to see.
Yeah, thank you.
Did you see, Brian? Did you see we're going to talk about this on the show, but
Right.
he said that he was in North Korea. And I'm going, okay, first of all, X is banned in North Korea.
Yeah.
That's number one. And number two, you have two-factor authorization on X.
Mm-hmm.
You have to use. You have to use an app, email, or phone.
Right.
And it said in the post that you logged in from North Korea, not that somebody tried to log in, which means he used a VPN. He went to the little North Korea button, right? Which are they're called ASN proxies. He logged in, created the thing, got the email, used the email on his phone to create something so that he could create a story, and decided not to go through all the steps to figure out that in order to do that, you have to do it using two-factor auth. So how did you get in if they got in?
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's just one of the many examples of him, making a fake story.
Yeah. Vote harder. That is going to be the name of the show today. Vote harder. Simp harder. Seethe harder. You didn't do enough. A narrative that's used to gaslight people. So we're going to bring in Brian Ference. He's an independent journalist and citizen reporter covering politics in Arizona. He's native-born Arizonan and lifelong Republican. He's been very active on the beginning, exposing school board members' corruption, which has now made national news. Brian Ference is a pro-life Christian and constitutional conservative who believes strongly in election integrity, smaller government, less taxes, securing the border, and stopping illegal immigration. He opposes anything socialist or communist, will fight for our freedoms, and strongly supports everything in the Constitution and Bill of Rights. He also is hot on the trails for Scott Pressler. I'm not sure that Scott wanted that sauce, but he got it. So with that, Brian, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Joe. I really appreciate it. That's probably the best intro I've ever had in my life, so I appreciate that.
I could do it with a little WWE in it as well. Get some John Cena in here.
You're going to get the bell to ring. Yeah, right now, the title, Brian, as far as exposure of Scott Pressler goes to you. But before we get into Scott, just tell us about yourself, and maybe tell us how, I guess, what drew your ire to make you research and look into who is considered by many in the conservative movement a political darling that you just can't touch.
Sure. I appreciate that. And maybe the only thing left off that list was, I'm absolutely a MAGA Trump supporter, 100%. always supported Trump, including against DeSantis and, all his other opponents. I've always voted Trump. But in terms of my, background a little bit and how I was first introduced to Scott Pressler, in Arizona, there is a well-known kind of grifter organization, which is EZAZ, which is run by a woman named Marissa Hamilton. And she originally ran for the mayor of Phoenix as a libertarian candidate, did fundraising at an abortion doctor's house. So a lot of people have kind of, been on her trail for a while. She runs cover for a lot of the rhinos in Arizona and protects the establishment. She's actually was documented on video and in writing, brokering a bribe, also with Jeff DeWitt. We all heard about how Jeff DeWitt bribed Kari Lake, but he actually bribed other officials in Arizona, and Marissa Hamilton was the broker for that. So she introduced Scott Pressler to Arizona through her PAC and her organization. And that instantly, caused a red flag. Everyone's kind of hair went on the back of their neck, went up. This guy, if Marissa Hamilton's introducing him, this guy's no good. And this is before Scott Presler was popular. He was just kind of starting out, and at first he was just doing voter registration. So I don't have any problem with that. Voter registration, fine, let's do that. And it was really once he started pushing early voting, mail-in voting, ballot chasing, that's when things kind of started to go sideways, and people started taking a harder look at him. He came to Arizona, the AZ-GOP state convention. I'm also elected state committeeman, and he was there. Nothing against his personal lifestyle choices, anything like that, but just describing what happened. He was there in cowboy boots and skinny jeans, and literally like pranced around the stage, telling us all to vote early, ballot chase, all these things that we know that just really informs and helps the Democrats to cheat. They're not effective. We saw that in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. Those methods didn't work. We lost. And so then, Scott Presler kind of went on to bigger and better things. He made the news everywhere. And just as he continued to not talk about election fraud and really deny it, everyone just got a little bit more concerned, started looking into him more and more. And then really what happened was once the financials started coming in and he started making millions and millions of dollars publicly, denying fraud, that's when I and some other team members started looking into him. And what we found is just really, really crazy.
Wow. Well, Brian, your approach is way more informed than mine. Mine was more out of frustration because I would bring up just what you brought up, which is early voting's bad, Dominion's bad, machines are bad, and we have the research and we have the expertise to know it's bad, and yet he was putting out posts like, I'm so happy to announce to you, Mr. President, that I have delivered in Pennsylvania. I mean, the hubris in the statement to basically take credit for delivering an entire state because you've gone out and picked up litter and took a selfie and registered some voters. And one of the things that I was critical over is there'd be states where he's doing registration drives. You go to a gun show and you'd show like pictures of 7 registrations. And in those states, we would get analysis from experts like Chris Jersky where 53,000 people on the rolls were deleted during the election. So I'm sitting there going, all right, that's not a +7. You're down in the hole by about 52,992 registrations. And it seems to be automated in many of these places that we've been able to validate. And so we bring these up, and we're just bringing the receipts. We're not trying to be personal, but the amount of gaslighting we would get for bringing it up, it's like I'd get gaslit into somehow attacking his personal lifestyle. I don't bring it up. It's not mine. I'm a Christian. I make no bones about it. But and then I had an encounter with someone, and you'll love this. I was actually in Pennsylvania, and there's a former Marine that invited me to an event, and he says, how come you don't talk to Clements? How come you don't talk to Joe Altman? How come you don't talk to the people that know these machines inside and out? And Scott Presler told this Marine, David Clements called me the F word, and he actually used the word faggot. Now, I've never had a conversation in my life with Scott Presler. So what this tells me is that
I'll call him a faggot.
Well, I'm saying I didn't, and I'm not.
But I don't mean that I think he's gay. That's not what I'm saying it for.
Not my point at all.
Okay.
My point is this: I have no problem expressing my opinions about my social values, but I've never had a conversation with Scott Presler in my life. The only encounter I ever had was Turning Point put on an event in Arizona, and he knew who I was. He walked by and put on some lip gloss, flipped his hair, and in a very effeminate voice said, "Hello, Professor." And I just kind of nodded to him. Never had a conversation with him. The point of this is that if he's saying that to someone, I know it's not true. How many people has he told someone, instead of addressing the substance of what we're saying, which is, you're wrong, when it comes to your election strategy, that he pulls the victim card and says that someone's attacking me for my sexual choices. So that bothers me on just an honesty level. And so we've gone back and forth, and a lot of people saying, why don't you just keep this between yourselves? Have you tried to talk to him in person? And we're friends with people like Sean Smith. People for years have tried to have one-on-one discussions to educate him, inform him, teach him. And he's flat out told these people, I do not care. So that was our introduction. But Brian, you've got a lot more research. So this show is your canvas. Start painting, brother.
Well, thank you. And one thing I try to do is, keep it to the data, and let's look at the data if Scott Presler's claims are true or not, or if they're proven untrue. And there's a website actually which has all this data, which I'm going to be discussing, and it's realscottpresler.com, realscottpresler.com. So your viewers can go there after the show. But there's a lot of data. There's the site. If you scroll down just a little bit more, it starts off just like, who is Scott Presler? It talks about, the historic loss that we suffered in Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, and then keep scrolling down just a little bit more. It talks about his involvement with Turning Point. Keep going down a little bit more. These are just some screenshots that show how involved they were in Wisconsin. I mean, they really put all their time and money. They were fundraising off it. But keep going down, and then there's some screenshots of his nationwide fundraising emails that were sent out, and then stop right there. So he was actually accused by several Pennsylvania activists, political activists there in Pennsylvania, of making fraudulent claims, and one of them was around the voter registration. And this chart there, it's from Audit the Vote PA, a very trusted organization. All the sources are cited under that graph, but in that graph, it's the net new registrations by election cycle. So you can see in 2015 to 2016, there was an increase of over 319,000 new registrations. But then in 19 and 20, it dropped to over 288,000. And then the lowest yet, the increase in 2023 to 2024 of 246,000. So if Scott Presler is really making true claims of, registering 50,000 people in Pennsylvania, the data doesn't show that. The data shows that the new registrations actually dropped. Also, that claim of 50,000 I think that was in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania specifically. His number 2 employee, Early Vote Action, 9 days earlier, publicly on X said, well, we registered 10,000 voters. So it's really impossible to increase from 10,000 to 50,000 in 9 days, according to some people who were there on the ground with him. So this is just an example, one of many of inflating claims.
So this is a claim that was inflated, and you go through the numbers. Because we have to do this for the audio versions as well, because we're not looking at this document right here in front of us. But you went through from 319,000. This is an increase in registration.
Yes, these are new registrations from 2015 to 2016, and then 2019 to 2020, and then 2023 to 2024.
And he wasn't even around 15 to 16.
That's correct. And his claim is mostly about the 2024 increase. He's claiming, oh, yeah, we registered all these new voters. But the data doesn't show that. And then his claims of in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, registering 50,000, the data doesn't show that either. Again, that's referenced on realscottpresler.com. Under that chart, it has all of that data. And then along with that, you had this public claim from Scott Presler. It was a public tweet, and he was talking about, he didn't see any fraud in Pennsylvania. There was no fraud there. This is what he says exactly. It's on that site, but it's down a little bit farther. He says, I stand by my comments. You were wrongfully telling people the election was rigged when it wasn't. You have no evidence that there was any wrongdoing in this election. It's quite a bit farther down. But keep going. I'll tell you when. Keep going. We'll go up to that one in a second. Yeah, keep going down. Almost there. It's just under this. Yeah, right there. So that's a quote from Pressler on X. It was in response to a large X account, MJ Truth Ultra, just kind of questioning him, saying, "What about this? What about this? This doesn't make sense." And Pressler, publicly posted that. And then there was some private message between the two, which was very polite. And then Pressler ended up blocking him because that's what he does. Is if you question him, he blocks people.
So, Brian, really important. But it says, "I stand by my comments. You are wrongfully telling people the election was rigged when it wasn't. You have no evidence that there was any wrongdoing in this election." He literally is doing the work of the radical left and the establishment to get us back to the vote harder, vote harder, vote harder.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly right. And he was talking about Pennsylvania in this case, but there is a lot of data coming out in Pennsylvania now about irregularities. There's always the potential of fraud. If you do look at the ballots being returned in Pennsylvania too, you'll see that one of the claims that Presser made is the reason we lost is because Republicans didn't turn out. He said that publicly as well. Republicans didn't turn out. Well, that's not true either, because in off election years, it was the same similar turnout, and they did actually get a number of ballots returned. But this is something I discussed with Audit the Vote PA. It was really interesting. They're going out and registering these low propensity voters. That's what Pressler's and Turning Point's kind of game plan is. So these are a lot of time Republicans that they're unlikely to vote. So they went out and registered at least like 800 of those in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. But then when you look at how the ballot returns came back, the Republican ballots did get returned, but they went Democrat. So, we're not even talking about fraud. We're not even talking about anything else. But what they did is they registered a bunch of low propensity voters. And then in the end, the result was that most of those went for the Democrat candidate, which is why we lost in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. So you could say that Scott Pressler and Turning Point were directly responsible for that loss, which was previously held for 35 years consecutively by a Republican.
Brian?
That's right. Plus 16 R, and I don't think the Republicans lost since like 1979 in that particular area.
Since it became Lancaster.
Yep. And one of the things that we understand is I'm not so sure that we should concede that they were registering low propensity. Because what we find in our research is that through automation, people are bloating the voter rolls. And yes, they are usually being bloated with no propensity or low propensity votes. And they're just put in a column. And you can basically create a fake ballot that's tied to a voter ID. And of course, they're going to cast ballots for the uniparty. So to the degree that it's 800 that they registered, these numbers, I mean, it's still a big number, but we've found places where we see fluctuation that looks automated, and so you still got this open system architecture that they promote, and then you've got the Turning Point part of this, and I know a lot of people love Charlie Kirk, and I'll be the first one to say 90% of the conservative issues, I think they hit it out of the park. So I don't think we're unfair to Conservative Inc. But when it comes to the dominions of the world, we had people like Pastor Andy Thompson show up to a roundtable pastor's conference. He's a pastor, and he politely asked Charlie Kirk about what are we going to do about machines? What are we going to do about early voting? And he got called a Fed. He got called a Fed in front of all of these other pastors by Charlie Kirk because he didn't like that he asked this question. He got really heated. And the person that came to Charlie Kirk's defense, I know Joe knows this because we broke this real time, was a guy named Bob List, who was the former governor of Nevada and now a current lobbyist for Dominion. And the Dominion lobbyist was on stage with Charlie Kirk. So it's not this Governor DeSantis with Libby Locke defending Dominion. You've got people close to Turning Point that they've got a memo somewhere. Do not criticize, do not bring any attention to the dominions of the world, the ES&S of the world. And I want to ask you this, Brian, because you did some research on some of the questionable donations that have been received by, I think it's Early Vote Action PAC. There might be a few others, but can you tell us a little bit about where the money's coming from?
Yeah, that's a great question. And if possible, if we can show that realscottpressler.com again, because I have some screenshots from Open Secrets. So this is FEC reporting of some of the donations. So yeah, scroll down a little bit there. Yeah, keep going. Keep going a little bit more. Right, oh, right there. Okay, so this is one example. So Pressler's PAC, which is called Early Vote Action, it has early voting in the name, just like his app. By the way, just a side note, Pressler's app is also created by a company created by Turning Point called Superfeed Technologies Incorporated. So Superfeed Technologies, who has Chief Operating Officer of Turning Point Action, Tyler Boyer, as the chairman of the board and CEO. That's the company that made the Early Vote Action app. But this is the PAC, Early Vote Action, and you can see that it raised over $6.8 million in 2023 and 2024. I have a screenshot, it's linked. Then if you scroll down, you'll see that his PAC received $118,000 in 2024 from two different members of the Rockefeller family. And you can, yeah, there's one of the screenshots there. And you can see,
see Elon Musk at the top.
Yeah, Elon Musk also donated $1 million. That I think Elon should get a refund.
Come on, Elon.
For that one. He definitely should.
Well,
but yeah, there's two different Rockefeller families. So if you are getting money from the Rockefellers, you have to think, how did that happen? Usually donations of that size, you need an in-person meeting, sit down, maybe they hand you the check in person. So how did Scott Pressler get in a room with the Rockefellers? And the Rockefellers, I mean, they're not going to just donate to good causes. I mean, they have been alleged to have just globalist New World Order influences, everything from the COVID-19 shot, eugenics, destruction of the education system, banking influences. I mean, this is not a family that typically donates to good causes.
Why did Fight Like a Flynn? Why did Mike Flynn give him $100,000?
Well, that's a good question. You see a lot of organizations on there, so.
Well, they'll throw a shout out to him every once in a while, and it's one of the reasons why I keep my distance, because I've seen the Flynn camp in rooms where they can read the room, articulate the threat, but there's never consistent messaging, and then you've got people that I guarantee are receiving a lot more money than the Brian Ferences of the world trying to solve the problem. I mean, think about what you could do with $100,000 for legitimate election integrity efforts, and they're going to the guy that's taking his selfies, picking up the trash, and just so people know, because I think we've got a smart audience. But Brian, are the Rockefellers known for adhering to MAGA principles?
No, just the opposite, really. I mean, if do a search, ask Grok on X. I mean, they'll tell you all about the Rockefellers and what they're involved in. And it's anti-MAGA. I mean, it's New World Order stuff. It's the WEF. That's what the Rockefellers are involved with. And since you mentioned, other income and stuff like that, by the way, I make $0. I've been paid 0 cents. No one pays me. I don't make anything from doing this. But again, on that website, realscottpressler.com, there's a nice photo and a screenshot of the over $100,000 car that Scott Pressler received for free. That was part of a fundraiser. Yeah, there it is right there. Also, there's an article that was written about Scott Pressler from Kartik Pratap, and it's a California Club India article. They do a lot of articles on net worth. So according to Kartik, he estimates Pressler's annual income at $700,000. Also notes that Pressler inherited a free $550,000 home and has a net worth of $4 million. So that's according to Kartik. So this is not a homeless dog walker that picks up trash. Turning Point, Charlie Kirk publicly pledged $5 million to Scott Pressler in his early vote action and ballot chasing initiatives. And that was before the PAC. So 5 million plus 7 million. At least. And then we didn't even get into Scott Pressler's family history. His father, Robert Pressler, has there's right there. He has a a very prestigious military career and actually served as the director of information operations in the DASD. So this is Department of Defense. He also was in
propaganda unit.
Yeah, that's exactly right. He was in global force planning, a program manager for counterterrorism, and that screenshot shows Scott Presler with Robert Presler in that photo on the left, wishing him Happy Father's Day. And then there's a screenshot of Robert Presler's LinkedIn profile. But the thing that gets really interesting now when you talk about his father, if you scroll down a little bit more, a lot of people have questioned, whenever I criticize Scott Presler or say anything like that, it seems like there's a swarm or a flame attack from just a whole bunch of people just gaslighting, telling me, I'm stupid, Scott Presler's a national treasure, all this stuff. Well, I did some research and there's 9 pages of this exact phrase basically being used, that Scott Presler is a national treasure, between February 7th and February 9th. And this is the type of like AI bot, or sometimes it's managed by human, moderators. And then if you have some paid influencers in the mix, I mean, that's the kind of thing that's really government intelligence. And if you scroll down a little bit more, you can see, there's 9 pages of this. It's the same phrase. Scott Presler's a national treasure. Scott Presler's a national treasure. There's some variation like the order, or they put a word or two. Keep going down a little bit more. And then another thing that I reference is a paper. Okay, go down a little bit more. This is a comment right there. Go up just a little more. This is from Emerald Robinson. She says, "Behold, the entire fan base of Scott Presler is in the comments section of my tweets day and night." So that's an example of this kind of flame attack. But let's scroll down just a little bit more. Scroll down just a little bit more if you can, please. Okay, stop right there. So it's interesting. We also saw this exact same thing happen in the AZ GOP chairman's race. And Turning Point Action, again led by Chief Operating Officer Tyler Boyer, basically ran this coordinated smear campaign against the AZ GOP state chair candidate. And if you scroll down, again, it's the same thing. They all have Turning Point Action employee icons. It's like the same lies repeated over and over at exactly the same time. And then if you scroll down to the bottom of that, now this is where it's going to tie into Robert Presler a little bit. So Robert Presler, yes, right there. So he sponsored a DOD report on influencing political outcomes. And it's a 100-page paper. It's called Improving C2 and Situational Awareness for Operations in and Through the Information Environment. And it talks about a lot of different things, but it's mostly influencing political outcomes. It talks about using social media and technology for this. And if you go through the report, I have some quotes. On page 32 of the report,
Karl von Clausewitz.
What's that? Say that again.
Holy crap. Karl von Clausewitz is military thinking.
Yes, it is.
The first thing he says, war is politics by any means. One central most quoted principle. Yeah, so this is... Okay, keep going. Sorry.
No, that's all right.
Have you ever read on Karl at all?
I don't think I have read all of it. No.
Okay, keep going. Sorry, I'll tell you the significance later.
Okay, so so Robert Presler, he's actually acknowledged in the acknowledgement for basically sponsoring the paper, but it talks about on page 32 mimetic warfare. It talks about specific tactics. Like this is a quote. Let me read this from the paper. When a post by a user has been met with an inundation or flaming by other users, the initial user may be hesitant or suppressed to post again expressing similar views. So you could see how that could be used for reputation management. If someone says something negative about Scott Presler, if there's this huge kind of swarm or flaming saying, "Oh, you're an idiot, he's a national treasure, shut up," all this, that poster is likely to say, "Oh, I guess I was wrong. I won't post that anymore." That's mentioned in this intelligence paper. And then on page 14, or sorry, that was on page 14. On page 88, it says, additionally, social media platforms were infiltrated by foreign bots and automated retweets. An analysis that fails to account for these facts would have negative values. It would mislead instead of inform. And then the last quote I'll read is on page 97 to 98. It says, the utility of using automation can be seen in Russian factories of people overseeing propaganda and trolling bots running many accounts that are near identical or use slight variation on the same message, perhaps via automated rephrasing. The sheer volume of content posted on social media sites is possible only via automation with reactions and responses to the post controlled manually. These are near MADCOM processes, and they suggest how hard it would be to distinguish sophisticated, fully automated propaganda from human-generated propaganda. And that's the end of that quote. So basically, you have an intelligence paper that Robert Pressler commissioned talking about how to influence political outcomes. It could very easily be used for reputation management. And then you have 9 pages of documented evidence basically showing that exact same method being used to defend Scott Pressler's reputation, and Turning Point Action using it to influence a statewide election.
Wow. One of the other things that I saw that really gave me heartburn is that most people have come up to speed on the corruption of Act Blue as a tool for money laundering. And I saw a screenshot that people were receiving text messages that purport to come from Scott Pressler, but of course it's not coming from his personal cell number. It's coming from like a Turning Point like app directing that people make donations to WinRed, which is the counterpart to Act Blue. And I'm not suggesting that WinRed has the same amount of corruption if you're just looking at dollars, just comparing dollars to dollars. But people like Peter Bernegger, Chris Gleason, Draza Smith have found that WinRed has donor meals on the Republican side. So if you've got something that you know of that's facilitating fraud, why in the world would you be directing people to make donations to this entity until you figure out what the hell is going on? And I've also noticed that there's a lot of people that, when I bring up this in social media, they'll tell me that they're trying to get off of his app. It's like almost impossible. Have you heard about either of those topics?
Yes, I have. I'll go in reverse order. So first of all, about his app, Early Vote Action, if you just look at the public reviews, either in the Google Play Store or in iTunes, you'll see several people have left a bad review, and they said, you know what, I used this to text voters, and then it triggered a spam flag on my account. I wasn't able to send, MMS messages for 24 hours and SMS for 24 hours. This hurt my business because I couldn't send text messages. So there's a big push to get everyone on that app. The app has had a lot of downtime and errors and things like that. There's been questions raised about privacy, what kind of data collection is going on. I believe it's on the Firebase platform, which shares that data with Google and some others. So there's a lot of concerns there. There's a huge push. I mean, if you look at Early Vote Action's pinned tweet on X, it's a video about how they're going to win Wisconsin, and make sure you download the Early Vote Action app. And I did see a bunch of those WinRed text messages and emails. I never donate to WinRed because I know that money is it's being misused. There's a lot taken off the top. It's not going to the specific candidates. You should always donate to the candidate directly. And I do believe that there is a lot of money laundering that's happening. All you have to do is look at some of the stories where a lot of Democrats received a lot of donations from questionable sources, and then all you have to do is look at, like, for example, Mitch McConnell, and he also received a lot of donations from those same questionable sources. And did that flow through WinRed? Probably.
Yeah, well, no, it's not probably. So I know some folks that have really scrutinized WinRed, and this is what's happening, is at least we confirmed this on Act Blue, is that people will legitimately give like a $5 donation, and then they're entered into the system. And then later, someone else is just using their registered address, because presumably they're probably putting down some of the metrics. And along with their name and their address, someone is now using it's not coming from that person's bank account. So someone else is dispersing payments through some type of digital payment where there's no CVV code on the back for security purposes, and then they'll make hundreds, if not thousands, of low-dollar donations in the name of that person. So the risk isn't so much that someone's going to rip off Republicans and extract money from their account. The risk is once they provide their voter information, their address, and they make a donation, unless you're monitoring the FEC database and doing your due diligence, what we're finding on WinRed in addition to Act Blue, is that people are making donations that they truly did not make. And that's going to be shocking for some hardcore MAGA person that realizes that 20 donations at, $10 a pop went to Mitch McConnell, someone that everyone loathes, but it's that kind of stuff that's actually happening. And to date, there really hasn't been a cleanup effort. And the talking points in investigating Act Blue, you'll notice, they always leave WinRed out of the equation. And so you've got some people that are kind of sympathetic to our side, wanting to expose the laundering, but they don't scrutinize WinRed. So it's interesting. What other insights do you have with everyone's favorite conservative grassroots activist?
Sure. Well, let's go back a little bit to Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. So, one of the claims that Prester made is, I delivered Pennsylvania for Trump in 2020, right? That's a claim that he made very publicly. There's photos of him in the White House, being congratulated for single-handedly delivering, Pennsylvania. But if you look at the Pennsylvania election record, specifically in, for example, Lancaster County, the total number of votes cast for Donald Trump only increased 6,000 across the whole of Lancaster County. From 2020, it was up from 160,000, basically. He defeated Biden there by 44,000 votes. And then in 2024, basically it would increase to 166,261 in 2024. So Trump defeated Harris there by over 46,000 votes. So what does that mean? It means there wasn't really a change there. It means that the Amish registration didn't change anything. The voter registration didn't change anything. It was always strong red for Trump. Really, no time should have been spent there at all. If there was no change for Trump's margin of victory there between 2020 and 2024, that's the chart. If you scroll down a little bit on there, you can see there the votes cast and the margin of victory. That first one is for 2020, and then if you scroll down a little bit more, you'll see the results 2024. So Trump easily defeated the Democrat opponent both times in 2020 and 2024 in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. So why would we spend any time there? I mean, it's very, very red, barring any fraud.
I'll tell you why, Brian. I'll tell you why. Because he needed a win.
Mm-hmm.
He needed a win that he could lie about and nobody would check it. He needed a win where if somebody walked in to talk to the Amish community, they're likely not going to talk to you, right? I mean, it's a very closed community. The Amish community doesn't have any interest in having a conversation with you about politics or validating or doing any sort of fact check. So he picked the lowest hanging fruit and he decided, I'm going to go here. And then we were able to uncover the election fraud in that same Lancaster County by different documents, not even ones, Brian, you brought up. And then he goes and says again on his page, by the way, he's blocked anyone and everyone that has questioned him. You could even say boo. And he would act like a Kardashian and block it.
Well, he's relying on the ignorance, though, there's a lot of it, of the average voter, because, it's one of those things when you're just looking at Trump's victory, everyone's like, anyone can claim that they were responsible for Trump's victory. And he certainly wasn't bashful in giving himself credit. But the problem for people that are proponents of getting rid of early voting, mail-in ballots, all the things that he embraces, is that you get this really weird, you can't reconcile. It's hard to reconcile. Like, is there truly election fraud if Trump wins when all the down ballot people don't. Or, case in point in Wisconsin most recently, you had Crawford, the Supreme Court justice, win, and part of her stump speech was to be against voter ID, and yet voter ID is passed overwhelmingly, and a lot of conservative talking heads fell for the bait. Look, it's not election fraud because voter ID won. It's like, no, you don't understand the system architecture, because you don't have to show up to a drop box and show your ID to what? The air? And so they will keep voter ID. Even the most, rabid uniparty Republican will promote voter ID. It's because they know that's not how the cheat is being brought about. And case in point, you've got a wonderful chart here. And I know Joe went over this a few shows ago. Again, this is at realscottpresser.com, which is the mail ballot breakdown for the 36th senatorial district. So, Paulo, if you want to bring that back up. And this just shows that, look, from the metrics that were available, 8,536 ballots were sent out by the SOS or the election officials. And there's metrics through the software that shows you how many were returned. And according to the official data, 7,124 were returned.
Which put this up or not?
It's got the sky blue bar chart. It's right above Presser's PAC early vote action raises over $6,871,000. But my point is this: if you had 7,124 ballots that were returned in the system, you shouldn't have results that exceed that number. And you certainly shouldn't have results that exceed what was sent out. And so what you have from a result standpoint, 8,869 mail ballots were submitted in the results. So this is election fraud. This condemns every single thing that Scott Presser said. We've seen no evidence of breaking fraud. Bullshit. And so the data doesn't lie.
It repeats the same thing over and over again. And here's a bigger issue when you look at the Democrats and the defection that would have to happen from Democrats to get to the mail-in ballots to get back to the results. That defection would have to happen in a time where even Democrats have a higher propensity in saying that President Trump, they have a high regard for what President Trump is doing in office, historically.
Yeah.
And so it flies in the face. Look, at the end of the day, all we can look at is and what they'll say and what they continue to say is there's no evidence. There's no evidence. You can't get into the black box. You can't get into the vending machines. You can't get into the inner workings of, or whether or not there is rootkits or phantom ballots or even fraudulent ballots that are being run out by one person in multiple ways. You can't get to the bottom. You have to take the chess pieces off the table.
Now let me switch gears real quick for both of them, because we kept conversation primarily on the data.
Yeah.
But there's something else going on here. And towards the bottom of realscottpresser.com, you get some really salacious videos, or not videos, but pictures of Scott Presser modeling. And I've seen these before, and they've been run around. There's a lot of allegations, rumors over some sexual indiscretion in Virginia field offices. A lot of that stuff's out there, and I don't have firsthand sources, so I'm not going to repeat that. But the pictures seem to be validated. I don't think he's pushed back saying that this is Photoshop. And the reason why I bring this up, there was a few curious posts, not from Presser, but from someone, I don't know his name, laying in bed together. And what I'm seeing is this psyop to rebrand or move the Overton window on conservatism, right? And so for people that really believe in conservative values, it seems like you've got the Caitlyn Jenners of the world and the Scott Pressers of the world now kind of trying to do a great reset on, look, as long as we're all on the same page about voter registration, this stuff flies. Laying in bed with another man, taking romantic photos, this stuff flies with the Republican Party. And I'm embarrassed at how little pushback, the party has anything to say about this, because if it was someone that, was like more like George Santos, remember, he was very controversial, but
they just kicked him out.
But he ran afoul, and the Republicans had no problem bringing up his personal values and basically saying this guy's bad for the party. And yet you've got this contradiction with Scott Presler, who's carrying out deep state talking points on how to vote, and everyone and their mom that says that they're a Christian conservative are saying, we don't judge what he's doing in the bedroom. It's like this giant mea culpa. And, it's just interesting. So what are your observations on, I'm not asking you to talk about homosexuality or whatever his personal choices are, but just in general, this idea of what conservatism means anymore. If the Caitlyn Jenners of the world and Scott Presslers are basically leading the charge on what it means to be a Republican.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I did put it also in the chat. I think the link to the photo that you were talking about. So if your producer wants to pull that up later, but to answer your question, let me answer it this way. So when President Trump was on stage and a bullet whizzed past his head and hit his ear, and he thanked God that he turned his head in time, because otherwise that bullet would have went through his brain. And that's the kind of divine intervention. I mean, can you imagine what would have happened if President Trump had been assassinated at that time? We likely would have, a Kamala Harris president right now.
No, we'd be in a civil war.
Or civil war. Yeah, I mean, it would be, a lot of people would die. It would be terrible. So it was God's intervention, and I believe I'm a Christian, devout Christian, and many people believe that it was God's intervention that won the victory for President Trump, because this nation was being destroyed. We had the exact kind of lack of morality at the White House. I mean, you had all these photos coming with it, videos being shot, pornographic videos being shot in DC, in the chambers, on the lawn of the White House. And it's truly the degradation of morality that, many believe, including me, that has caused, God to not abandon America, but, that's why we have this time of tribulation. And it's a return to, Christian faith and traditional morals and values, and God's intervention then that placed Trump in the White House, that saved his life. So to then throw that back in spite of God and say, you know what, we're going to ignore all your other teachings, of morality, of family values. We're going to throw that all out the window. And, for a long time in my history, I never had any problem really with what people wanted to do in the privacy of their own homes. But the problem is it didn't stay in the privacy of their own homes. I mean, people said when gay marriage happened that, it would be a slippery slope. And we saw that it was. Now you have, all these trans drag shows going on for your students, and in the schools, they're attempting to chemically castrate and sexually mutilate children. So it was a slippery slope. So we need to, honor God and our traditional family values and return to truly what conservatism is the original Republican Party platform in the 1890s approximately. And that platform is what true conservative values are, true family values are. And that's what we need to return to, and certainly not be glorifying or raising up into hero worship someone who is against that.
Go ahead, Joe. So my business partner is a gay married Jewish father too. One of my best friends. Like I don't care if you're gay or straight. I don't care. I'm going to be an example to other people around me of my values, but he doesn't dance around or prance around like he's some sort of Kardashian unicorn queen, right? He doesn't do that. And my issue, Brian, is nothing to do with his sexuality or even the slippery slope. I believe that the challenges of the devil are going to exist generationally. It's going to happen. My problem is that we have allowed the GOP to morph itself into what we cannot recognize. And that all of a sudden now we have to accept abortion. We have to accept, trannies just kind of walking around doing their thing. And we have got the LGB of the LGBTQ has been hijacked. by these deviants that now say that we have to accept pedophiles. We have to accept people like Scott Presler that dance around and prance around like some sort of, I don't even know. I don't even know what to call it.
Well, let me jump in on this because I know Apollo brought up the image. So just so everyone knows what we're talking about, Apollo, go ahead and bring it up on the screen here. And okay, so we got what's the caption under this? Does it go down? I mean, because I know there's a comment.
There's some comments in there, but this specific one says, if you have a problem with two dudes in bed together, you're not a true conservative.
Okay, yeah, so that's the quote that I saw before. And look, this is someone that's showing up to the AmFest. Go ahead and take it down, please. It's too distracting. But, the AmFest where you got families that are celebrating Judeo-Christian values. And one thing that's hilarious is you'll have these videos where Charlie Kirk, it's so selective, and it's kind of funny now because how old is Charlie? Is he in his 30s?
Yeah, I think you should probably hand over the turning point to somebody else.
I'm your moderator. Chris Paul does these great posts about how he and Ben Shapiro are now like older men, like who are educated, worth millions of dollars, are destroying 18-year-olds that don't have a fully formed opinion on anything. But the point is that they will defend Judeo-Christian values on campus and yet give this guy a stage with pyrotechnics to address supposedly Christian families, and we're all told, don't have an opinion. I'm a little bit different than Joe. I get where Joe's coming from. For me, I think if you lie to yourself about personal choices, like if you lie to yourself as it's okay to be a boy right now and I can be a girl in 2 hours, that same dishonesty on a personal level will affect the way that you look at elections, election prescriptions. And so the degree that I chime in publicly, I try to make it all about the election stuff because that does affect me. But, if I were to take my kid to AmFest and this is the representative for Judeo-Christian values, in my home, I've got something to say about that. I may not be as vocal about it online, but, God cares about morality. And I think right now, what it shows me is that in the conservative space, the Overton window has been moved so far to where people will talk about deviancy only with respect to transgender stuff, transgender insanity, and they've kind of washed their hands on homosexuality. And I get it.
Well, I'm not washing my hands.
I know. I'm saying that ship has sailed. My point. You're not going to get a robust defense. I think what Brian's talking about in the 1980s, because I know the case you're talking about, it was Justice Scalia that talked about the slippery slope, and he was mocked and derided because he talked about if it's homosexuality now, it'll be transgender tomorrow, bestiality the day after, and he was mocked and derided. No, that will never happen. Well, it's happened.
Okay, so let me just. People, everyone has their cross to bear, right? I was just telling David before we got on. I'm not sure what my bad habit is anymore. He's like, "Don't worry, we'll find it."
It's pride. It's pride. Ego.
Okay, ego. We found it.
I don't have any bad habits. Is the way that you just.
Well, no. I mean, my point is, I am searching for it. I gave up drinking. It was a bad habit. I gave up drinking. I've searched for things that I can remove from my life that hurt me, and I don't know how we got on this, but I do think there's a cross to bear that everyone has. Everyone has their proclivities that have pushed them into a dark place. Anyone that says they don't, and again, I'm trying to eliminate dark things. I think my biggest thing is I want to beat the hell out of people.
There's that. There's definitely that. Yeah. I think this is probably the best way that I can encapsulate this discussion on the morality issue because it is important. Is that if we profess to be Christians, let's take it to its logical end. God has said something about just about everything on what he expects. And conservatives will treat the Bible like a Chinese buffet. And when it comes to some of the lifestyle things, we concede a lot of territory. And if you disagree with me, if you're not saved by the blood of Jesus, that's fine. I don't care. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm not trying to shame anyone. But I'd like to at least have the First Amendment right to boldly fight for my faith and the tenets of my faith. And someone that doesn't share it can boldly fight for their tenets. And that's fine. That's America. But I just don't like the hypocrisy of a Turning Point entity that has pastors' conferences. They go to churches and they promote family values until they don't.
Right.
I think that's what bothers me. I think if it was someone else, if it's Bill Maher or someone else that doesn't espouse it, I don't think it bothered me one bit. But this bothers me. Brian, we kind of monopolized the conversation, but feel free to chime in.
That's okay. No, and I do like to focus on the data as much as I can, but in regards to what you were just discussing, what the Bible says, that if your brother sins, you should chastise him, and it also says if your brother repents, you should forgive him, and that's what I believe in. And there's a prominent homosexual influencer named Milo that's certainly self-admittedly
He
done
used
some
to be.
done some
He
sinning
used
in
to
the
be
past.
homosexual.
He's claimed that he has been celibate for, I believe it's 2 or 3 years celibate. So I mean that's the type of, and he says that he's repented, and he tells it all there himself. So that's the type of thing that deserves forgiveness. But let's compare that to Scott Pressler. I've heard personal firsthand accounts, including GOP conferences where allegedly Mr. Pressler is going on the Grindr app and bringing a male date with him, a different guy each time, to those GOP events. And allegedly there's a lot of promiscuity there. There's a lot of other, allegations that are being made that I won't voice at this time. But I mean, that doesn't show repentance, and certainly lying about, election fraud, lying about your registration claims, lying about, single-handedly winning elections. Even there was a video that Pressler posted that got 2.5 million views, and it was a door knocker Pressler posted, "Oh, this lady is a Democrat door knocker. She's, swearing, cursing, smoking." Well, he later had to admit, "Oh, you know what? That was an early vote action employee, and I fired her."
Yeah. Well, Brian, I appreciate your willingness to commit to the truth, knowing that there's pushback, whether it's bot traffic or not, because people will get caught up. They do see the national treasure. The other thing I think I saw was there was a bunch of comments on get this man like a Medal of Freedom or like the highest civilian honor.
Right.
Like, we're ready to basically give this guy the highest honor for registering voters. And I first, honestly, I didn't know what was real or fake, because I would try to be as meticulous as I could on just voter prescriptions on election integrity, and I would just I'd get the riot act, just like and I'm sitting there going, I'm not even talking about his personal lifestyle. I really don't care. I just want us to get our country back, and so I commend you for investigating this. And I know that there's going to be a space this Friday. So why don't you go ahead and share a space that you're going to be having on X coming up?
Yes.
And tell us what we can do to support you on social media, your work. If there's anything, Substack, what have you, now's the time to promote away.
Sure. Thank you very much. And you're correct. This Friday, it's at 5 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, which is 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. There will be an X space, and we're going to have several speakers, including myself. We'll deep dive into some of this data. We're going to have some firsthand accounts from people that have worked one-on-one with Scott Pressler, worked for his PAC or worked on the ground with him. They'll give their personal accounts. We'll talk about the data a lot. And, I understand, both Joe and David are going to be attending and speaking as well. We do have some other speakers. You can follow me on X at Brian Ference 1. Please do visit realscottpressler.com. I also have a podcast, which is on the screen there. It's magamindpodcast.com. You can also search wherever you get your podcast. Magamind is one word, and then podcast. And then, of course, brianference.com. And again, I don't typically ask for like any type of donations or anything like that. If anyone wanted to give me a tip on X or visit my website to support this research, there is a lot of time and effort, and then sometimes expenses for obtaining some of this evidence and supporting other team members. So that's always welcome if you're interested. But please do attend the space this Friday on X. That's posted on my profile, and I'll probably post it a couple other places as well. But I look forward to having you both speak in that space on Friday at 5 p.m. MST, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
I already told you why I wouldn't show up, and I just want to be really clear, Brian. I am from. I say this, and David gets mad at me. I'm from the South Side of heaven, down here the South, and over the last 4 years, yesterday I did a podcast with a guy that did not believe that the call with Coomer happened. And I was on X and he was saying that it didn't happen. And this is one of the few times I'm starting to get softer because I'm going, okay, take a deep breath. But I had him on the podcast and I went through his story about being doxxed. And I really wanted to hear it because it was good for him. It was good for him to get it out, and it exposed some points of interest that were the same. And then I asked him the question, do you believe that I was on that call with Eric Coomer? And he's like, no. And I was like, okay, let the journey begin. And I spent the next 2 hours going through and giving him evidence along the way on a timeline. And at the very end, I asked him the question, do you believe that I was on this call with Eric Coomer? He goes, absolutely, and I'm very sorry for doubting. So the same can be said for the amount of suffering that I've gone through over 4 years. My family being attacked. I live with an AR-15 next to my bed, and I'm not a victim. He's not a victim. I'm not a victim. We're targets, right? And so I'm a system architect. So I understand data probably better than most. David and I were talking about some creepy stuff that I did before we came on the podcast. So truth means a lot to me because I've given up a lot for truth. And so I can't be on a spaces with someone that fundamentally, it'd be like me asking you to be on a spaces with Scott Pressler, but you cannot talk about who he is, right? You're not allowed to do it. They just want you there. They want you to talk, but it gives credibility to Scott Pressler. Would you do it?
Well, that's an interesting question. And first of all, the individual that you mentioned is not going to be on the space. He already publicly stated that he won't be. He's not a speaker. So I think your concern is alleviated. But to answer your question, I don't know. If I could be on that space with Scott Pressler, I'd probably just write on a little piece of paper, hold it up and say realscottpressler.com. And, maybe I would do it. I don't know.
The problem is that, think about this for a minute. Jesus could hang with liars and thieves, and he was good at it, right? He was good at turning their hearts. I mean, the Saul to Paul conversion. And I believe in what pastors do when they stand on the pulpit and say that we should, turn our other cheek. That is for insults. That is not for the destroying of our communities and our country and the gobbling up of our children. We are meant to be warriors. We are meant to be men. But if you hang with those people, then people see it as basically a nod that those are the people that you're okay with it. You're willing to tolerate that type of behavior, and I can't hang with liars.
Yeah, but I think Brian's made clear that this person and also.
But I'm just telling you that there's a difference.
But there's a degree of understanding that we have got a journey with old Jeffrey.
Phil, y'all.
And so just so Brian knows, just like you've done with Scott Pressler, we've done the same with Jeffrey. That's his real name, by the way. And so, but we also know that there's so many factions, and I've seen some of the message behind the scenes, and I know you're trying your best to negotiate it. So
we offer you no judgment,
no judgment
for it. I've just told you what my position is and why. And you can talk to me. I never call anybody up like Julie Kelly does and say, "Oh, you can't talk to this person, can't talk to that person." Man, talk to them all. It's all about the message.
Yeah.
Right, and I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, we don't expect. Go where the truth takes you, and there's audiences that you need to speak to. We want to do the same thing, but
carry a big stick.
Yeah.
I usually do, but I'd also ask for prayers for anyone watching that, the space go off well, that the truth can be spoken, that any bad actors are silenced. We did another space earlier, and there was a lot of really strange things going on. Audio quality was poor. It seemed like we were being throttled. There was a lot of bots on. So hopefully none of that happens, and this space is successful, and the truth can get out and be told.
Well, Brian, I'll be there, and I think my contribution, I think just to echo what you just said, is I'd like to just pray and then let the experts talk, because there are so many people that are going to be on the space that know far more than I do. I'd really like to hear people that have actually had direct encounters with Scott. But I think this idea of having humility and speaking truth and in love, and so I'm not against Scott Preston. I'm really not, but I cannot support lies that I know are going to make it more difficult to retain the House and the Senate when we just got this miracle this past November. I don't want this to be a 2-year experiment where we go right back to the shitter because we're buying a bunch of lies, and it's worth speaking up about. So, Brian, we're going to finish up the show. We're going to pray for you. We pray for all of our guests at the end of each show, and just want to say thank you for joining us here at Untamed.
Thank you so much for having me.
Good guy.
Very good guy. I was a little irreverent, but I'm typically irreverent. It's been a hard 4 years, David. You and I haven't had to talk about this since the November 5th election. But it's like the
all right, we're clear. This is Brian Ference at Brian Ference 1, BrianFerence.com,
so many
and MagaminePodcast.com.
Thank you.
Happened
over that 4 years, and now we're